And a continuous very good morning to you all. We're clocking 11:30 and of course we have some surprises at the very exact spot. I'm pretty sure the microphone can take care of the greatest portion of this drilling activity. Make sure it is absolutely spot on. I just finished in 1402 with the quote from Plotinus, and we are discussing gluons. I think it's worth mentioning that gluons are subatomic particles or subatomic being stemming from quantum physics, and they are not constituted. They do not consist of smaller parts. They are a perfect example of oneness, unity, and object is only when it is one, not referred, deferred, represented, or taken apart. And I do recommend that you read The Master and His Emissary, because there it is clearly shown that the taking apart is a feature of modern day thinking. The ontic question had become a plague. I continue just after the quote. To be, then, is exactly to be one. One might object, it would seem that we have plural forms of reference. Thus we can say, for example, that Russell and Whitehead wrote Principia Mathematica, and that they were in Cambridge together at the time. The conjunctive noun phrase and pronoun appear to refer to objects that are inherently plural. Similarly, one can say that something is a square but one can also say that some things have the same shape as each other. The italized quantifier is plural and refers to a plurality. There are then objects that are, but are not one, being plurality. Russell and Whitehead, for example, is an object, but not one object. The reply is simple, however. The machinery does not allow us to refer to objects which are plural, but to a plurality of objects. Thus, when we say that Russell and Whitehead wrote Principia, we are not referring to some strange object, Russell and Whitehead. We are referring to Russell and to Whitehead. Similarly, if we use plural pronouns and quantification, we are referring to multiple objects. If something is, it is one, a unity. And if some things are, they are ones, unities. The machinery of plural reference does enable one to refer to a plurality of objects, but each is one. So to be is still to be one. Let us now put all these thoughts together. The being of something is that in virtue of which it is. To be is to be one. So the being of something is that in virtue of which it is one. And what is it in virtue of which something is one? By definition, it's gluon G. The being of something is therefore its gluon. We have answered Heidegger's question as to the nature of being. Five, Heidegger's aporia. We are not finished yet. We still have to deal with Heidegger's aporia. He is forced to talk about what cannot be talked about. How so? We are now in a position to see how. The being of any object / being X is its gluon. A gluon both is and is not an object / being. Since it is an object, it can have a name, alpha, the being of X. Hence, one can talk about it by saying things like alpha is not a being. But I had to put a little stop there. Make a summary. Another thought that makes itself present is the language game of the later Ludwig Wittgenstein. And he would show that sometimes the what is a very apt question. What is the matter? Or what is that thing I cannot see clearly? But it wouldn't be a part of the language game to say, what is this cup made up of? What are its constituents that are the cup? That is patently wrong. That is not understanding the game. Heidegger makes extensive use of reality. Things are for us what we use them for. They are never still in the way as in a laboratory, and there is no movement at all. Something that Heidegger calls Vorhandenheit, or Vorhanden for short. A very unusual state for anything to be in, and it's also paired with a special modus Stimmung. It's a specific attitude, and it's a moral attitude towards the world as not having unity, having existence or meaning. It's a stillborn, grey, energyless world. Maybe my colleague has a comment.
It's exciting that Priest invents or introduces this gluon theory. So what is a gluon? It's a elementary particle that works as a force between quarks. And gluon comes from the verb to glue, so it binds things together, like it's a force that binds quarks. So it's interesting that Priest introduces quantum physics indirectly. So he says that for Priest, a being is a gluon that is neither an object nor a being. It's more like a force, like a counterfactual, if I understood it correctly. It's very good. I like the idea, of course. So it's a force that binds things together like a glue. It's very excellent metaphor, so to say. But if I might say something contrary, so so let's say it is hairs on my body. Are there something? Okay, they are perhaps glued to the body, but there is what is exactly the glue in my body, so to say, scotch. So everything that is not perhaps of direct use might seem to be superfluous, like my hair. But okay, on the hand, they are glued, so to say, to the body. attached to the body. I don't know. So what do you think, Hans, about the gluon idea of priest? Back to Hans.
Well, you put me on the spot there, Kalle. I just barely remember what gluons are or is. So this is my bad memory. I will check it out. I think gluon was both the thing, so to speak, and the force that keeps it together, oddly in the same time. And I think that's why they were called gluons. In my memory, I am not 100% sure. I will check it out. It seems to be an excellent, it's an excellent metaphor there, or image of priest. And it brings to life what something is. What is it for something to be? Taking it apart, like taking a plant apart, like in a laboratory or by a biologist, will rid it of all essence. It will not even be alive anymore. So the fragmentization is something that brings stillness to the living gluon-filled world, because gluons are everywhere, and they are most definitely vivid, never still, acting, and also having a direction. I put a pause here. So we continue with the Heidegger's aporia here. But it is not an object being as well. Since it's not an object, it cannot have a name. And if it cannot have a name, one cannot refer to it, and so one can say nothing about it. That, of course, is a contradiction. But that is exactly the terrain we are in. We can, in fact, make the matter quite precise. The intuitively correct principle governing truth is the T-schema. For every sentence A, A is true if and only if A. Thus, Socrates was human is true if Socrates was indeed human. Analogously, the intuitively correct principle governing denotation is the D-schema. For every name N, N denotes X if N equals X. Thus, Socrates denotes Plato's teacher if Socrates is Plato's teacher. Now, since alpha is not an object, not some x equals alpha, Heidegger was right. I skipped the equations a bit here. Then, in his conclusion that one cannot say anything about the being of an object, even though one can, and in case one thinks this is some peculiarity of Heideggerian philosophy, it is worth noting that the very same situation occurs in some paradoxes of self-reference. Well, we have a lot of examples in Douglas Hofstadter's Gödel, Escher, Bach. Thus, take Koenig's paradox. This concerns ordinals. ordinals are numbers that extend the familiar counting numbers 0, 1, 2 beyond the finite. Thus, after all the finite numbers, there is a next omega, and then a next omega plus 1, and so on. Crucially, ordinal numbers preserve the property of the counting numbers that any non-empty collection of them has as least member. How far exactly the ordinals go is a somewhat vexed question. Both mathematically and philosophically, but it is not contentious that there are many more ordinals than can be referred to by names of a language with a finite vocabulary, such as English. This can be shown by a perfectly rigorous mathematical proof. Now, if there are ordinals that cannot be referred to in this way, then by the properties of the ordinals there must be a last or least. I think it is least. Consider the phrase, the least ordinal that cannot be referred to. This obviously refers to the number in question, and one can use it to say things about it. Such as that it is the least ordinal that cannot be referred to. Yet, since it cannot be referred to, one can say nothing about it. In this regard, it is just like a gluon, and in particular, the being of an object. How gallantly! That is just fantastic. My comment here, we've been looking into the area of ordinals before, even before the start of this series, in the guise of Ashish Dalila. We think too much in cardinals, and that will cover up the truth of orders. And do remember the question, what is, as in what is the being of beings, is in the wrong order. As I said earlier in the lecture 1402, it comes, so to speak, out of sync. It is deferred. Not present. Not completely there. So the thing is not in place because it's deferred by the question what is, which takes time, but it's not in place either in space because it's referred to something that is different, therefore not here. One could say that the Newtonian paradigm is working in concert to make things fit. Take the background of the Newtonian space, then you can say that the referent is outside of the scheme and the original thing is still the same. And that, I would say, is trickery that leads to infinite regresses and paradoxes. These paradoxes gets absolved by counterfactuals, and it's about time. Them been plaguing, pestering thinking for so long. And it makes thinking be out of sync with itself, adjusting to an imaginary space timeline. Hiding the true reality of existences. Paragraph 6. Brace yourself. And so, we have answered Heidegger's Seinsfrage. The being of a being is its gluon. Heidegger was just wrong to give up trying to answer the question. Of course, the fact that being can be said does not, Wittgenstein notwithstanding, mean that it cannot be shown. I can tell you what a cricket bat is and show you one. The answer, it must be admitted, uses the techniques of modern mathematical logic. And in particular, paraconsistent logic, something that Heidegger could have known little about, since he died just about the time that this was being invented. The answer is none the worse for that. Nonetheless, Heidegger was right in insisting that the being of a being is not itself an object being, and in concluding that one could therefore say nothing about it. The answer to the question of being requires us to talk of the ineffable. Being is indeed a strange beast. Once more, and sorry to be repetitious, I am remembered by constructive mathematics of Brouwer and Bishop, how a habit in their eyes becomes something that makes mathematics unreal. And that is the habit of the law of excluded middle. Here we have a habit of a lifetime. We directly ask the question, what is it? And most frequently we answer it ourselves. And we defer the meaning, the liveliness, the unity of the thing elsewhere. in time and in space. That is by mechanically, so to speak, use the what is question. We lose the object, we lose the existence. It becomes grey, phantom-like. And this is exactly what happened to the perception, the experience of Plato. His experience became dull. Dulled out, phantom-like. And from that came a want, a need for something more. Grasping reality, nurture his hungered perception, his soul, his consciousness. The tragic idea of the cave is a good illustration of his wants, his needs, his urges, unsatisfied. This is also so incredibly close to constructivist mathematics, where the ordinary mathematics have become unreal, non-meaning, almost nonsensical. Thinking itself becomes shallowed out. All aspects of existence becomes ontic, less. And I think from that comes a greed, this grasping tendency, this verbosity that plagued Hilbert and Kurt Gödel, that made them depressed, distraught and destroyed when it was discovered that nowhere could those magical references be found. The system ended up in an infinite regress. In many areas before have we covered this measure or sign that something is wrong. It's a bit like the cat in the Matrix series that tells you that something's up, something's not correct. Many times I stumble upon that, as in the idea of perception being in one individual, and that my perception goes through my system and then projected somewhere back at the back of my head and seen by a homunculus. This, of course, does not make the what is question unlawful. Just remember, it is a very unusual question to ask in that forehanden way that is dominant in all intellectual thinking today. In everyday life, it's almost absent. Instead, we get the meaning by using the things, zuhanden. That particular eerie, scary almost distance that is so indicated in the early Wittgenstein is a very rare mood indeed. All the things in this room are for me or someone. This is how, by being located, being one, they come to have meaning for me. And from that comes my ability to use the words in the same way. Words are also zuhanden, to be used as they should, not in an eerie, off, mechanical mood, and perpetually ask the what is question for everything. Like a parrot that become completely mechanical. The inability to perceive objects, to letting them have existence, is talked about a lot in the seminal book of Ian McGilchrist, The Matter with Things. It makes clear that this tendency to take apart, to fragment, and to defer, to put out of time in the very presencing, is becoming the modus, the mood, what Heidegger would call Stimmung of the modern age. It is not uncommon today that pieces of art are accompanied by explanations, referrals, what is questions, what the art is, anti-question. Like the art in itself is no longer one. As if it can no longer speak for itself. It has lost its voice. It has become mute. No longer an object, an existence. I don't know if the greyness of this February afternoon can be likened to the greyness that now is casting its spell on all of Western culture. It is a metaphor that only works to a certain point. David Abram, and I just vaguely remember this, not perfectly sure how the name is supposed to be pronounced. Abram, A-B-R-A-M. He writes about the senses. that in contact with our environment, words, our language get its meaning, and also that is the foundation for any understanding. Whether it's what we usually call practical or abstract. How our words, our thinking is embodied in the connection with the world. And that today has been loosened, that very important connection is no longer as strong as it should be. The book In the Return of the Senses, I'm not sure about the title, I will check it out. There is a very telling example how an Indian that had been living his whole life out in his native soil gets driven by a person many years ago, and while he was driven he talked about the places that they passed. His memories of what the tradition was, what plans were there, it was all connected to his embodiment, his life. As the car accelerated, the Indian started to speak quicker, with more haste, catching up with the areas they passed. This, I would say, is zuhanden. When you living it, your thoughts, your words become meaningful. They become one, not fragmented as consisting of something else. He's living in that ground. He was living in that neck of the woods, not a general neck of the woods. Those trees were iconic, being just the one, unique. So I think you can see the connections here. Sorry, I got got some cacao in my mouth, my throat. We mentioned many times before how this monetizing of the world calling all the objects the same, generalizing them, something that has its very bottom in the Newtonian paradigm. Where everything is what is ontic, deferred and different from itself. Consumerism has made this worse. Everything is general now. Every thought is general now. People's way of acting, intending, has become flattened out, devitalized, deadened. The marker that Graham Priest used is the all marker and the some marker. It looks like this. Upside down A, and it tells that for all x, the property y is. This is a logical way of looking at what is. In quantum mechanics, this sign doesn't even make sense. All is nothing or with no meaning. How would the Indian be in contact with all the trees? No, the tree and each tree is iconic, unique. That is also the lesson from quantum mechanics. Whatever you are talking about, gluon, photons, electrons, they do not have the very odd character of being the same as someone else. They are completely unique. And they don't get their uniqueness from the others. Other doesn't even mean anything. You see how this comes into play here, and how Jacques Derrida so aptly picked it up, the deeper, more encompassing understanding of how things really are working and how they become. I would say uniqueness and becoming are related. So we don't do the mistake of thinking that there are general things, all, and that they all simultaneously come into becoming. In that case, the problem would remain, would even be enforced. It would get stronger. Uniqueness, iconic, are the traits of the things of matter. They are not generalizable. They are most definitely not reducible to collections of atoms, molecules, substances, chemical compounds. You cannot tell whether a certain alimentation or food is by looking at the Newtonian classical composition as a collection of different molecules, chemicals, heats. They are unique, but they also share traits, knowledge that has been lost. We used to know what was good for us. I do not think it to be a weird coincidence that the pharmaceutical companies go to for instance, the Amazon basin, Papua New Guinea. They in the depths of the Congo, into Mongolia, to look for knowledge, to get understanding of healthy herbal medicinal plants. Sometimes they manage to copy the effects in the laboratories, but always something will be left out. We are also part of it. Our name giving, property giving, is not an unreal part of the world. Something that often is implied with the what is question. And that is an odd other effect that Graham Priest does not go into. And that is that the what is question hides the true nature of the object, its vividness, its uniqueness, its capacity to tell, to presence, to be. But it also hides what we call it, the words, the denomination, and that we are active in giving properties to the unique objects. Those properties are not something superfluous or extra or transcendentally unreal. They come from this world, not outside of it. And it could be a very fair assumption to say that they have a role to play. They do play a role. An example in the same vein as we discussed earlier with the herbal medicines of in the knowledge of indigenous people. The same holds for us civilized, or if you dare say that. aspirin has a decisive effect against problems with the heart in North America. The same effect does not exist in the UK. What we predict or project and the whole web of predictions and what the objects tell, their uniqueness, is an enormous uniqueness composed. That is decisive and in many cases very hard to understand. It quickly becomes way too big to fathom easily. This is an enormous amount of knowledge that we just block out with the what is question. I often like this view, this Newtonian paradigmatic view, with that of an onion. If you peel an onion, it will eventually disappear into nothing. There will be no uniqueness to it, so to speak. And we do the same. If we take a country, say any country, we say on top of it, the outer layer, is a substance that we ask the what is question, and we call that culture. And we defer it, block it out. Underneath that are the humans, and they are the same, not unique. And the properties of that nation is not an agglomeration of all the unique people living in that country. It doesn't have a oneness to it, because they could always be fragmented over and over again. And then underneath the human onion layer, to continue the metaphor with the onion, we find the atoms that are exactly the same. So the nature, the houses that builds up that country is the same in principle as any other country in this world, this earth. And in the end, we have no object, there's no country, they're just superficial, peelable layers that we can take apart for hand and like. And in the end, we have nothing, no properties, no existence, no vividness. We have detached ourselves, and we also detached the thing that we're investigating. And somehow we can magically tear apart the layers. So one is culture or tradition. And you can take away the humans from the tradition. So you have naked humans, maybe only in the underwear. You take what is called traditional clothing away. Talking about Switzerland, we take the lederhosen away. And then we have a unique person gone. It's a person in general. It's the sign A upside down. And what we hide is this mysterious word, tradition, culture, or whatever denomination we choose to give. But we put that together with all the other traditions, and we call them culture in general. What I want to add to this metaphor is that the peeler is not outside of the peeling activity. And this is once more the cat as in the Matrix. There is actually an activity going on, although we try to hide it. And that comes from the one doing the peeling. We become diminished, and we call ourselves observers or individuals. In a very generalized manner. In the end, there is nothing special with me. I give myself the denomination individual on a general basis. And in the end, I go to the upside down turned A. I become one of the whole. This in sharp contrast to the example given by Graham Priest. Russell and Whitehead doesn't erase or categorize in that manner. It's one, but it's still unique. Whereas this new modern left hemisphere individual is a generalized individual that carry individualized, or rather conventionally das man-like traits of individuality. So these traits turn up wherever you look. They are not exclusively within gluon theory or deep questions of being. It is most definitely here in everyday life. We are ourselves eradicating the individual uniqueness of ourselves, and we acquire or conquer own traits to show our own uniqueness, but they will truly be like in the metaphor of the onion, peelable, discardable, not of this uniqueness, vividness and force. It will be lifeless, of less value. I think this goes nicely in parallel with Ian McGilchrist reducing left hemisphere, making everything similar, obliterating uniqueness, and even making uniqueness itself an upside down A. For all unique objects, the following hold that they are unique. So this becomes an ersatz for true, authentic living, to use a Heideggerian term. You become generalized from the inside at the very same time as the world becomes ontic. It's a double take, and it happens simultaneously. Well, it became rather long here. It stirred many interesting things, this article by Graham Priest. I will try to find the correct references to the works I mentioned. Thank you very much for your patience, and have a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye for now.